Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for joining our WP Engine webinar. Of course, if you're from some other part of the world other than sunny Australia, then happy whatever time of the day it is for you. My name is Mark Randall. I'm the Country Manager for WP Engine for Australia and New Zealand, and I'm joined today by my colleague Ricky Blacker, who will be speaking after me. And the topic is how to automate your WordPress site to boost lead generation. So moving on to the content. Who is WP Engine and why are we talking about this topic and why are we qualified to do so? We have actually 90,000 customers now in 130 countries, and our WordPress specific digital experience platform is used to power over 500,000 websites. So really what we've tried to do today is draw out what we've seen from our experience of dealing with WordPress at scale and provide some of those tips and tricks that hopefully will be useful for the people listening today. So our fun fact on the bottom left here that I'll share with you, 5% of the web visits one of our hosted properties every day. So pretty cool stat there. I'm going to hand over to Ricky, my colleague, who's going to talk about our first section, which is about automating development. Over to you, Ricky.
Good afternoon, everybody, or wherever you are, whatever time it is. Welcome along to our talk. I'm going to talk a little bit about automating development. So before we start with anything, we have to develop a site. So before we start getting leads, before we start marketing, before we start building landing pages, we have to build that website, build those pages. So how can we automate that? Well, that's very easy in this day and age, especially with WordPress. So developing sites from scratch is a thing of the past. You can really accelerate your website build these days by using things like a theme framework. So we use at WP Engine, we actually have the Genesis framework, and there's a lot of other frameworks out there that you can use. Now, on top of these frameworks, you'll find a whole heap of kind of pre-built templated sites that will plug on top of that framework and give you a functionality or a look of your site very quickly and easily. So with the Genesis framework, I think there's roughly over 100 different templated out child themed sites that you can simply pick from, which will give you that great start to your website. So once you've built your site, what's the next step? Well, next thing you have to do is start building out your pages. This is once again very quick and easy with things like page builders. So Page Builder will allow you to kind of modularize parts of the page instead of having to build them out with code or providing the content bit by bit. You can actually modulate it, pull in, almost drag and drop parts of the page. And that can be highly functional parts like sliders and post widgets, menus, anything you want can be populated onto the page. The other thing too is that they can be customized in lots of ways. They can be even pushed, you can replicate them across the site and have a master element to it where you can push changes to one which will push to all. So it makes things very quick and easy. At the moment, Beaver Builder and Elementor are two of the top leading page builders, and they've been developed now, so they're very lightweight, very easy to use, and they speed up your time to market very quickly. What's also happening in the world of WordPress at the moment is we've had a big change in the text editor, which is native to WordPress. A lot of people know it as Gutenberg. It's now known as just the new text editor. But what that brings is block-based editing. So in the days gone by, you would just basically type out and add images, and it was very clumsy. It didn't work quite as well as people wanted it to. But what we have now in Gutenberg is a way to modularize, and very much like the page builders, you can drag elements in which are pre-modulated and easy to use. They can be customized, and there's a lot of options out there. For example, atomic blocks, which can add functionality to that. It will allow you to bring in things like a post grid block, a testimonial block, an accordion block very easily without having to code anything out. And that lives natively within WordPress. So you don't need an external plugin for that as such. And that speeds up your development a lot quicker. In fact, at WP Engine, where it used to take us anywhere from 2 to 6 weeks to build out landing pages for a marketing campaign, We can now do that in an afternoon. The last time we did it was basically an afternoon's work, where we were able to drag in these elements and build them out quickly. And of course, they were modulated by our teams, and not only were they tested against different browsers and different coding levels, but they could also be locked down to our color palette, so our branding wasn't compromised by marketers putting in the wrong color. So it brings our time to market very quick. Once you've built out your pages and you've got that part under control, the next thing you'll be looking for is to add functionality to your site. Now, the best way to do that in WordPress is to find some plugins that will add the functionality. And there is a lot out there. Now, finding the right plugins that are performant and well-maintained, it's not an easy job. It's a huge ecosystem out there. Some of the things to look for is to make sure that they're up to date. Have a look at how long ago was the plugin kind of updated or maintained. Have a look at the popularity, how many people are using it and how many stars it's got. But don't base your solution on that alone. I mean, have a look out there and see any others that might be there and test them out. We've, at WP Engine, have actually got a solution center, which we vet all the plugins that we test in our solution center and make sure the code is up to scratch and that the developers are ethical developers and not doing anything untowards. And it kind of takes some of the guesswork out of it. So you can have a look at our solution center for some ideas, but I mean, there are just literally hundreds of thousands of plugins out there that will add functionality to your site. Some plugins, like I said, you have to be very careful about the ones you put in there. Some of them have a very negative impact on your site. Now, I'm not saying that they're bad plugins, but some of these plugins can be very heavy in their resource usage. So things like the broken link checker and related posts, and there's others like the P3 profiler, which checks for your plugins to see which ones are causing problems. They make a lot of calls to the database. They can make a lot of calls to PHP, and which will slow your site down. Now, the best idea of anything like this is not to use them if you can, or if you do have to use something like this, like for example, the broken link checker, put it in, check for broken links, and then remove it, which will keep your site very fast. Or if you've got a staging environment, you can always bring it down to a staging environment and check it there. Next thing we need to look to is automating site maintenance and performance. Of course, keeping your site up to date and performant and making sure everything's ticking along nicely is important. And how can we automate this? Well, there's a lot of different ways. Now, one of the things that people don't think about is their PHP version. Just recently, there's been a lot of studies across the web on how PHP versions can affect the resource usage and the speed of sites. And it's been shown across many independent tests that just going from PHP 5.6 to PHP 7.2 or above can actually have a 3 times increase in speed or required per second processes. So it's very important to keep an eye on your PHP versions. And of course, PHP 7.1 and 5.6 are no longer being maintained, so there's security issues with them as well. So there's no more patching on those. So it's very important to keep them up to date. Security is probably top of mind for a lot of people. The last thing you want to do is have any problems with security. So things like Cloudflare, which implement very stringent WAFs and block a lot of DDoS attacks and any bad actors, are vital to keeping your site safe and secure. And also having an SSL certificate. As most people know, Google now downgrades your SEO ranking if you don't have an SSL. So making sure you've got an SSL is vital. We use Let's Encrypt at WP Engine, which is free. We don't charge for the SSL certificates. And even though they expire every 3 months, we have a script that will renew it every 3 months. So it's a set and forget system. So making sure that your site's got, I mean, with solutions like that, there's no excuse why everyone shouldn't have an SSL on their site. And of course, you know, as you can see from one of our opening slides, we blocked over 36 billion attacks in 2017 alone. That's something you don't want to have to be worrying about. So making sure whoever you're with is blocking these attacks, keeping you secure without having to worry about it, is vital. That's the last thing you need to be working on is, security. You want that working in the background, knowing you're safe and secure, and then you can get on to bringing the leads and creating the content to your site. Caching is also a very big part of making sure your site's performant, keeping SEO requests, keeping your SEO value at high levels. So page caching has been around for a long time, but I've been doing a lot of research lately and finding that having the caching at the infrastructure layer is definitely more performant than having the normal page caching plugins. So page caching, as you know, will serve all the static assets from your site very quickly and stop a lot of traffic hitting your server, which makes your server more respondent and faster. So making sure that you use infrastructure caching, so using Varnish and Nginx rather than plugins, is vital in keeping your site fast. Okay, I'm going to pass it over to Mark now to talk about automating content production and distribution.
Thank you, Ricky. So we're going to move right on up the stack now and start talking about content, as Ricky said. And obviously, I don't need to tell an audience of digital marketing folks that content is king, right? And maintaining constantly updated, engaging, relevant content to your audience is really, really important. Google will reward sites and it will crawl your site more often. So how do we go about that? First of all, you really need to understand which content on your site is currently engaging and resonating with your audience. Google Analytics is a great tool, but for marketers, it can be kind of challenging to use it in a way that allows you to easily identify how content is performing. So, for example, which authors are being most effective in bringing new users to my site, or which topics that I'm writing about are keeping people on my site for the longest. So having a tool that helps you understand which content on your site is engaging your audience is going to help you easily create more of that content. So we have a tool called Content Performance that does this built into our platform. There's also third-party tools like Monster Insights that will help you do this. Pre-post SEO is a great tool that you can use. Again, we're going to talk a lot about SEO type tools because obviously that's really important for a lot of people with leads. But whilst Google Search Console will allow you to easily find duplicate titles or descriptions, pre-post SEO makes it about 10 times faster and a lot more detailed. And they even include an article rewriter that will help with plagiarized content. And it will give you keyword density, a broken links counter, an SEO score, and all sorts of other things to help with your SEO efforts and to train you to be a better writer. Another great tool for SEO is the WordLift plugin. So this is an AI and artificial intelligence tool designed for WordPress, and it helps content marketers write without worrying about how search engines work. So you can write, your content in your normal way, but it will translate the articles into metadata that can be used by chatbots, crawlers, and digital assistants. And it will enrich the user experience. And their research recently proved that implementing their plugin would help increase the number of visits, increase the page views, and increase the time on site. So definitely all of that is going to help with the lead gen efforts. Of course, content is not just about text, and being able to integrate rich media content like images is going to really help have benefits on SEO, and also break up your content for easier reading to help keep people on your site. So, what's the best way to add images to your posts? Maybe you don't have time and resources to take all of your own photos. So Image Inject actually will allow you to pull a photo from Flickr or Pixabay that closely matches the content of your post. So really speeds up that process for you, and you can select multiple photos, insert them together, and it's really quick and simple to use. Infographics and infograms are also another really great way of making information easy to digest for people. And Infogram is a data visualization tool that integrates as a plugin that helps you create interactive charts, infographics, maps, And it's also fully responsive by default, which means it will automatically adapt to our mobile devices for you. And best part of this one is it's actually free to use as well. Opinion stage. Everyone wants their sites to be entertaining and engaging for their audience. So, adding polls, quizzes, surveys, slideshows, can really help you with that. And opinion stage is a great way of doing that. It allows you to share your polls via social media very easily. So you can pull traffic back to your site where you can measure it and where you can convert it, from social media. And you can even integrate advertisements to generate revenue through it as well. And it has a pretty good reporting module. Organising and scheduling your content is really important. The editorial calendar will help you do that. So you can easily see when your post is scheduled within WordPress, and the calendar will give you an overview of when each post will be published. You can drag and drop if you want to move things around, and you can actually even edit posts right there in the calendar. So it gives you a nice, view and a way of, organising your content and actually updating it based on a rolling calendar model. Content distribution tools are really important as well. Tools like Revival, Post, for example, Hootsuite, Snap, that allow you to post once in WordPress and post out to all social channels automatically. This will help maximize the reach of your content and drive more inbound traffic to your site. And again, this tool will help you stagger the scheduling to suit your needs. So you can use this, for example, as a good way of managing campaign traffic. So if you've got a new product launch and you're going to have a flood of traffic to your site, staggering the way in which that information is released to different social networks can really help you, manage that and avoid overloading your site and causing performance issues. Mobile apps. So everyone knows that most traffic now is on mobile, especially for B2C type sites. But interestingly as well, 27% of app users found out about their app through search engines. So it's actually also another great way to rank. Only building an app and not a website will mean that you lose kind of part of your audience. But new technologies now like PWA or progressive web applications will actually allow you to build once, but essentially build your website so that it's got app-like capabilities like offline, like push. So rather than having to build a website and then build a separate app for iOS and a separate app for Android, you can just build your website using PWA and serve all of those with one development effort. Now, downside to it, I guess, is it does require rebuilding of your website. So great news for any web developers or agencies that are listening in. But if you don't want to rebuild your website, there's tools out there like AppPresser that can also help you easily create a mobile app that's tied to your WordPress site. So now I'm going to pass back to Ricky, who's going to talk about automating lead response.
Thank you, Mark. Okay, so let's get into automating lead response. So what would an automated lead gen machine look like? Well, we had a little play with this idea to see what we could come up with, and we had a bit of fun. And this is what this is our model, and we've actually had this in the wild working, and it worked really well. So let me just take you through all the parts and see how it works. Well, the first thing we do is we need a WordPress site, and that's where we start. And what we're going to do there is we need to publish some content. What we're trying to do is, the end goal of this whole system, if we go back here, is we want to get a calendar appointment with an end client. So we basically want to have a phone call, a face-to-face, something like that. And this is a system we're going to use, and we're going to automate it as much as possible. So we've got our WordPress site. We want to generate some content, maybe push out some social networking, who knows what. But we're going to start with a WordPress post. What we want to do too is we want to create once and publish often and out to different channels. So like Mark was saying earlier, you can use plugins and different ways to do this. One of the ways is use something like Buffer. Another way is Snap, social network auto poster. And what you can do is create a post, in WordPress and then push it out to different channels, for example, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn. And you can also schedule it to go out at different times. So you're not sort of flooding the net with one bit of content. You can stagger it and try it in maybe different days, different hours, who knows. From there, we want to obviously bring a response. We want to do something with that. You know, we're not just pushing it out for no reason. We need something to come back. So we will have a link to a landing page. Maybe it is a landing page, but somewhere along there, we're going to have a way for somebody to input some data. So one of the ways we can do that is with, for example, Ninja Forms. Ninja Forms is really good. There's a heap of other ones that you can use that will integrate with all different CRMs or things like MailChimp. The idea is you want somebody to enter some data and you want to get a reply from that to use in your campaign. From there, we can go into some really fun stuff. So we can use things like Reply.io to automate replies out. And then we can even do something really off the cuff. So we can use some webhooks and integrations to go to something like Engage Spark, which can send out an SMS. So somebody goes to your form, your landing page, puts in some data. Let's say we capture a phone number. From there, we can send out a nice little SMS that will say, hey, thanks for contacting us. We'll be in contact shortly, whatever message you want to give. And there we've got a secondary point of contact beyond the internet. And as you know, the more points of contact with a customer or potential customer, the more chance you have of getting where you need to be with that deal. So the other thing was we got a, say, Reply.io or any kind of CRM or mailing list component, which can then put on a drip campaign. For example, you know, maybe you'll send out one email that will just say, hey, thanks, you know, welcome, whatever. And then we can drip feed some other content along the lines of white papers or information or anything you need to bring the deal to a completion. Of course, the end goal of this whole system is to get some kind of a face-to-face phone call, person-to-person engagement. And that's where it gets interesting on how we automate that. So one of the ways we found is to use something like XAI, which is a automated virtual assistant. With this in place, so we've got a reply from a candidate. We've got a phone number. We've got an email address. This AI system can now start setting up an appointment for you, completely automated, using real speech. So it uses an email system. And what it'll do is it'll start sending out an email to this candidate. And it's going to ask, are you available on Tuesday at 12:30 p.m.? The candidate will maybe email back and say, no, actually, I'm not available at that time. And we'll be able to read that text and have a look at your calendar and go, right, what's the next available time? So it might push out another available time to the candidate. At this point, you know, you may get another one back that says, look, I'm only available on Thursday. This will go backwards and forwards until it finds a suitable time for the two of you. So it's you checking your calendar, it's talking in real speech to the candidate. And this can be happening while you're asleep, during the week. I know from personal experience that lining up appointments with people, it can be a lot of backwards and forwards with emails and trying to figure this out. So having this automated can work really well. Now, we've used this. It does work. It does have a few little glitches, but it is getting better. But the end result is that at some point you will get a mutual calendar date where you can set up a call or you can set up a face-to-face meeting. And this is, you know, from one little simple post, all this has been automated out. There's been no points of contact of me actually doing anything other than the original post. And now I've got a calendar invite with a candidate. And you've also had multiple points of contact, so email. So, well, we can start off, we've got the social post, we've got email, we've got an SMS message. You know, and then eventually we're going to have an actual phone call or face-to-face. So multiple points of contact. We need at least 5, I think it is, to really sort of bring somebody on board. So there's 4 out of the 5 already. Okay. So like I said, we've had this working, works really well. And this is just an example of what you can do. And this is very quick and easy to be done with WordPress and just simple plugins. There's no custom coding here. A lot of this is just out of the box. So I'm going to finish up. I'm going to hand it over to Mark to give you the 4 key takeaways.
Thank you, Ricky. So we're just coming up to the last 5 minutes, so holding perfect time so far. I hope everyone's enjoyed the content so far. But yeah, the 4 key takeaways we'd like to leave everyone with today. Number 1, do use page builders and development best practices when you're building your site. It is possible to do it in a simple and automated way, and choose your plugins and themes really carefully. There's a lot out there. They can be very powerful in terms of what they do for your site. But you want to make sure you choose the right one so you don't cause yourself problems later or slow your site down. Number 2, WordPress is free, but it's kind of free like a puppy is free. It needs regular maintenance, and there are platforms and tools out there that make this simple. So don't spend time on things like, backups or security or, caching or, CDNs, when there's tools and platforms out there that will take care of that and allow you to focus on your site content, code, and your marketing initiatives. Number 3, leverage tools to make content more engaging. First of all, start to make sure you understand which of your content is currently engaging your audience, and then make sure when you are building that content that you're distributing it by all available channels in order to maximize your SEO. Finally, you invest a lot of time and effort bringing people to your site, so make sure you're using automation to drip feed them further information, keep them interested, and also to respond to inquiries quickly and try and get them to a point where you've got some kind of calendar invite so that you can have a conversation with them, and you're going to set a great first impression if you're able to do all that in an automated way. So that's it for our content today. Thank you very much for joining our webinar. And obviously, if you have follow-up questions that you'd like to ask outside of this event, please do contact the WP Engine team, whether that's in Australia, the US, or the UK. Thank you.
All right. Well, Mark and Ricky, thank you so much for an amazing webinar. The knowledge that I gained was absolutely amazing. I'm sure my team will be using it. We have a few questions, by the way. I'll just just let you know about them. Just give me a second. So one person asks, is Hootsuite better or Buffer?
Could you repeat that one again, sorry?
The question is Hootsuite better or Buffer?
Oh, that's a good question. That's kind of like saying, is it forward better or Holden? When we're talking about software plugins, everybody has their own personal choices and it all depends on your end use case. So my best recommendation is if you really don't know which one to go for, try both. Usually there's free versions of these plugins and software that you can test out, but also look at what it does and what you need it to do. And things like cost, if it does cost money, there's sometimes different ways that there's some are on subscription, some are paid add-ons. So yeah, looking at it's a really hard one. I don't want to say which way to go on that one. Test it all out, see what works for you the best, and take it from there. Okay.
All right. Great. Ricky, the next question is, does WordPress have any limitations or advantages over other platforms?
Oh, yes, it does. Well, limitations, yeah, I mean, every bit of software will have limitations in one way or the other. But I think with WordPress, the advantages outweigh the limitations. One of the great things about WordPress is open source. So it's not owned by a company. It's not locked down. It's, you know, it's open source, driven by the community. It's going to be around for a long time. It's not going to be affected by a company going bankrupt or, you know, going into liquidation. It's not going to be influenced by somebody who decides to take it in the wrong direction and loses the audience. It's actually powering 34% of the web at the moment. So that's a huge chunk. I mean, that's 1 in every 3 sites out there in the web is a WordPress site. It's not going away anywhere fast. And one of the great things too about WordPress is because it is holding such a big chunk of the web, we're finding that all the MarTech developers and, you know, like, people want to integrate with WordPress. So there are more integrations with WordPress than any other CMS or software platform out there. It's even taking on and winning against the big giants like Adobe. So if you look at the stats of where WordPress and Adobe are at, they're neck and neck as far as adoption, especially with the top 200,000 sites on the web. So I mean, that's one of the other misconceptions of WordPress is that because it's got the big percentage of the web, people think it's a long tail. So it's all the cat blogs and the, you know, the marketing funnel sites and the abandoned sites, but it actually, it's 1 in 5 of the top 200,000 sites. So we're talking like Google's and Facebook and Microsoft, all the big players out there. We're still holding 1 in 5.
All right, great. The last question says, can you name some plugins that I can try to accelerate my marketing?
Oh, that's a good question. So there's a lot of plugins out there that can do that. It depends on what you want to do. Now, yeah, asking which plugins to do that is like, once again, that's a very open-ended question. If you've got an exact use case, what I find is do your research. So what you want to do is find out what you want to do with the plugin or with your WordPress site. Googling is usually the first point of call. You can Google up, and the way I do it is I'll Google, kind of ask a question. So, for example, if I want to, you know, post to multiple channels on social media, I will ask the question of Google: how do I post multiple channels of social media from WordPress? It will then give me a list of plugins, which I then have to go through and try and figure out which one's the best. Once again, there's a lot of sites out there can help you. We at WP Engine have the Solution Center, which we go through quite often, and we're trying to find the best of the best plugins to recommend to our customers. So using that's always good. But you know, like it's a very difficult thing with the amount of plugins out there. So do your research, figure out what you want to do, and ask those exact questions. And don't be afraid to look into the WordPress community as well. There's a lot of people out there who are willing to help and lead you in the right direction.
All right, thank you so much, Ricky and Mark. I think it was a superb webinar. You know, this webinar will be live on YouTube. You can view it any time you want. Thank you everybody for joining this webinar. My name is Deej, and I head a company called Salesgasm, which organizes Intrigue Summits and Intrigue webinars. Thank you for joining us. For more information about our upcoming conferences and webinars, do visit www.salesgasm.com. Thank you so much again, and have a beautiful day. Bye-bye.